Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're excited to bring you this webinar. Anglepoint and Beneva are constantly striving to find ways to help educate people on software asset management and application portfolio management. So we decided to do a webinar on how SAM and APM are better together, because careful management of these areas can lead to strategic gains for your company. We're not just talking about mitigating compliance risk or how to rationalize your application landscape. Successful SAM and APM programs lead to better business processes around acquisitions, purchasing, overspending, security, asset management, legal, IT, and finance. Leveraging SAM and APM will provide business owners with quality and insightful information that allows them to make key decisions that help drive comprehensive approach to cost optimization. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we'll have about 60 minutes, and we plan to spend about the first 30 minutes walking through SAM and APM and the synergies between the two. And then we'll go over a brief overview on Beneva and Anglepoint. And then finally, we'll use the remaining time for questions and answers, and we hope that's a lively discussion. But let's start with some quick introductions, and then we're going to dive right into the content here. So I'm Dave May. I'm a director of business development with Anglepoint. I'm responsible for helping clients build custom solutions to optimize their software estates. And I also manage several partnerships for Anglepoint as well. I've been working in the SAM business for over 13 years. Most of my experience was with Oracle. I was working with the compliance organization there, but I'm quite happy to be working with clients over on this side with Anglepoint now. Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Hayes. I'm the manager of the SAM program design practice here at Anglepoint. So it's my job to work with our clients and ensure that they have a sustainable and optimized software asset management program, but also to look at all different various phases and stages of program development and support our clients get from one stage of maturity to the next. Prior to working with Anglepoint, I've been a global software asset and license manager at a couple major European multinationals, and I've got total about 13 or 14 years industry experience. And with us today as well is Leonard. So Len, do you want to go ahead, please?
Sure thing. Good day, everybody. My name is Len. I'm the founder of Beneva Consulting Group. And in particular, I run our application cost optimization practice, so application portfolio management and APO. I've been doing that for about a decade, working with very large organizations and small organizations, and including mergers and acquisitions up to about $60 billion of enterprise value, helping organizations to identify cost-saving synergies and capture real savings. Really, my pleasure to be here today to speak with everyone.
Thanks, Lynn. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you guys to begin diving into the slides here.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dave. So we certainly see common challenges no matter which organization we go into support. And the common challenges sound pretty simple, but they have big implications for organizations. Certainly almost everywhere we go there, we see, organizations just struggle to get visibility into their total software license counts and different types across the organization. We see most organizations have pretty substantial redundancy within their application portfolios, lots of opportunities for removing software titles and consolidating onto more common platforms. And additionally, organizations really struggle with sources of truth for software data. A lot of companies have multiple spreadsheets, have their CMDB in an unreconciled state to the applications listed in their financial system or that they're tracking. And not only that, but that's just the IT side. Business paid applications are often really hard to fully identify and know what's out there across the enterprise. And so CIOs frankly really struggle with even identifying how many applications do we have. So when you combine these three challenges together, it really creates a big hurdle for IT departments and often results in very significant spend inefficiency and audit risk. So a comprehensive program is really needed to tackle all three of those things. And we can flip to the next slide, Dave. And not only are our IT departments really under consistent cost pressure, any of us who've worked in IT know that reality, but there are certain sort of drivers as well that tend to compound or make these challenges even more pronounced. So some organizations have a history of mergers and acquisitions where, even if a company in its original state would have had 7 different project management tools, for example, across the enterprise that could be consolidated down to 1 or 2. Now, when you bring 2 companies together, you're sitting there with 14. So mergers and acquisitions present a huge opportunity for really capturing synergies when it comes to your application portfolio, both from a licensing and a rationalization perspective. Cloud migration is very similar. The portfolio should be cleaned up and optimized prior to moving to cloud and start paying for those workloads. And both Amazon and Azure have published white papers saying that APM is a necessary precursor to a successful cloud program. Other drivers at organizations as well tend to be some enterprises have a very historically decentralized operating standard where different groups could just buy their own software in their history, and nobody was really necessarily centrally managing that or having visibility into all that. But some companies then go through these, one organization initiatives where central reporting, central financial management, central purchasing authority, and all of that is brought under one umbrella. And so often for those organizations that do operate in a geographically decentralized manner or business unit decentralized manner, there's a lot of opportunity for consolidating again on common platforms. So lots of drivers for organizations that may be part of your history that definitely put the thumbs up on opportunities for savings. And so the next slide, Dave, just talks quickly then about SAM and APM, and we'll start diving into this topic of how these 2 integrated projects can start delivering benefits for your organization. And we see often companies with a SAM program, but maybe not necessarily focus so much on APM or can't get APM off the ground, and vice versa. Organizations that have tried an application rationalization stream, but don't really focus on their licensing posture. And the reality is that both of these are very highly integrated. They both tackle application cost savings outcomes from different angles, but they both share a lot of the same data and processes and people and systems to enable their success. So we really encourage a comprehensive view of these to deliver that comprehensive cost savings outcome to clients. And so we'll talk about some of those shared processes and shared data and a sample project plan for how to do this. So next slide, just to make sure we're clear on our definitions, because we view this as sort of, 2 halves of the apple, the same apple. APM really is dealing with just that. What kinds of applications are in your environment? Overlapping that to a business capability model and seeing how many applications you're using to support similar capabilities and functions across your enterprise. And APM really focuses on the problem of application redundancy. And SAM, as we all know too, focuses in on licensing and how much you own of each application. And is that optimized? Are you in compliance with your agreements? Are you over licensed? Is there opportunity to save money and reallocate licensing and fees that way? And as mentioned, if we click again, Dave, it's good for organizations to concentrate on both of these together, because we're really leaving money on the table if we only have one of those 2 programs underway at our companies. So the next slide, I think, is Chris, and we'll hand it over to Chris to chat a little bit more about some people, process, and technology.
Yeah, thanks, Len. Absolutely. So kind of the way this is structured is I'm going to do a little bit of a mid-level dive into some of the concepts around software asset management and best practices in a program and a programmatic approach. And then Len and I will kind of go back into then the synergies between software asset management, the programmatic approach, and application portfolio management. So this is a little bit more on the software asset management programmatic approach topic. So the 3 main areas that one would want to consider when either incepting a program or looking at your maturity or thinking about your roadmap, everyone kind of think about their own organizational situation independently here. are people, processes, or technology. So just by way of a quick definition, we're viewing people as the personnel, either dedicated or not, involved or associated with either IT asset management or software asset management. Processes are the activities and workflows that are developed and help to implement policy and facilitate the strategy. So kind of how those strategy and policy elements are executed in the business, we view as process discipline. And technology are the software, tools, or systems that we leverage, right? And this allows the organization to drive automation, scalability, repeatability. So if you look to that kind of Venn diagram type graphic on the right, in the center is nirvana. Obviously, we want sustainable, scalable, and consistent IT asset management or software asset management. And that's really going to leverage the confluence of people, process, technology. You've got to get that balance right. So those related three triangles, kind of illustrate the challenges that you would potentially encounter. So the top one, if you had very dedicated people and good processes, but no technology or a deficiency in the technology area, your practice would potentially lack that scalability and efficiency that the technology could afford, right? You wouldn't be able to cover the entire enterprise in an efficient way, right? You're going to have burnt out resources in the area of people potentially. If you had very good people who were applying technology in a good way, this could be a one-off type approach, right? It might be very efficient, but the consistent programmatic type approach that's, again, afforded by looking at people, process, and technology wouldn't be there. There might not necessarily be a consistent structure to that approach. And if you've got process and technology, well, that's not very adaptable into your business, and it's not strategically driven, right? You have to have that people component as well. So the takeaway from this is really to leverage people, process, technology in a synergistic way to make sure that they're all going to work together and deliver the organization those benefits of risk mitigation, cost optimization, et cetera, through a sustainable, scalable, and consistent practice. Dave, you can go to the next one, please. So, the concept here again is very much one of a programmatic approach, right? On both the application portfolio management and the software asset management or IT asset management side. This is not a one-off approach. This is a capability that needs to be built and continuously matured in the organization to realize those synergies and realize those really lasting benefits. Otherwise, a one-off approach is going to lead to all kinds of issues on both sides. So in the software asset management or IT asset management area, well, here's the key question. Why not just a one-off exercise, right? Well, if you're approaching this with a mind to establish a continuously improving programmatic capability, you're going to have stakeholder and senior executive buy-in and support. Now, this is going to be critical. If you have a process and policy driven approach, the first time one of these policies is not controlled or a process is broken or not followed, in a structured programmatic approach, there should be a consequence. There should be some escalation management. There should be some follow-on action as a result of something like this. If you're doing a one-off exercise and attacking things and looking for kind of quick wins and improvements, that may or may not be there. But having a program and having the inception of a steering committee to support that is driven by stakeholders and senior executives, that's going to make sure that you get the buy-in of the full organization. You're also going to have potentially budget and resourcing, right? So if you're the one-man band and you're tasked with running around and chasing audits in kind of a firefighting mode, well, that's not a programmatic approach, right? That is kind of worst case reactive scenario. And having a quick exercise of, well, who's auditing us this year, this month, that's not going to put in place a recurring capability. Conversely, if you approach this with resource and budget, to the view of establishing a program and a capability, you're going to be afforded that. You can't do software asset management in a silo, in a vacuum, without budget and resourcing. But saying, okay, we have stakeholders and senior executives who are buying into this strategy and vision, and therefore we are allocated as a capability, budget and resources. I've mentioned a couple times, and it's not coincidence, that this is a continuously improving capability with continuous activity, right? This is not you've run a couple effective license positions, ELPs, and you're done, or you've deflected an audit successfully, or in the area of application portfolio management, you've had one check at rationalization. No, it's continuously improving. You can continuously generate value to the organization, and it's an adapting, improving discipline on both sides, application portfolio management and software asset management, right? The industry as such and technology are consistently evolving, so continuously improving and having that continuous activity are hallmarks of a program type approach instead of a one-off project. Potentially in your organization, you've got a PMO, so either program management or project management office, that if you have budget and resourcing, you've been allocated and approved of a program strategy, you can take advantage of this, leverage that capability, right? There, in a true programmatic approach, there is an umbrella activity of the program, of the capability, and underlying that program, underpinning, will be a series of projects that will deliver deliverables, your work product from each project. So coordinating all of those disparate activities and all of the parallel work streams, it can really benefit from having a mature either project or program management office. Again, approaching this as a structured activity, as a program, affords you that ability. The prioritized and managed and coordinated initiatives go along with this approach, right? It is not a big bang. It is not throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks and kind of, shrug your shoulders if it doesn't work. You are taking a considered approach to what should happen first, what should happen next, looking at the dependencies and coordinating this, right? That speaks to this previous bullet of leveraging that project or program management office capability. But having that approach and mindset overall will increase your chances of success in terms of a programmatic approach. It'll also force you, as a matter of cause, to have a business case to support your decision process, right? So which strategic decision are you going to take the program and drive this capability and improve the capability should 100% be underpinned in every case by a business case, or at least an analysis of return on investment. What value are you delivering back to the organization? But if, again, you've got a programmatic approach with executives and stakeholders, you're going to have to demonstrate this in hard dollars, right? Develop your business case and have that support the alignment and structure of those coordinated initiatives. In a programmatic approach being a capability, this can also facilitate the definition and maintenance of software and hardware standards, right? You can easily kind of think about the logic there and extend that to your full application or portfolio stack, right? In terms of application portfolio management, defining those standards, and then that will allow you to manage by exception and make your process life a lot easier if you're building this programmatic capability. And potentially, when you have a capability that is recurring, again, the concept is this is not just a one-off and not a reactionary one-off exercise. You will be in better place to be agile as a business, and you can support such things as mass changes or refreshes, right? You'll know what is out there in your environment. You'll be counting and counting well, as we like to say. So this ties to a couple of the points that Len had about software asset management really belying kind of what is out there in your environment from a discovery point of view. So those are a few points on, the suggestion that this really should be a programmatic approach and not just a quick exercise. You are building up a capability in your organization to drive that continuous value. Dave, we can go to the next one, please. So, thinking about this, okay, sounds well and good, makes sense. Programmatic approach, not a quick exercise, fine. How do we do something like this, right? So just a few successful characteristics concerning software asset management programs. I mentioned before the executive and stakeholder buy-in, really to support this and to facilitate, like I mentioned before, the management of escalation and the setting of strategy and aligning that strategy with operational initiatives under the program. it's imperative that you create and have a well-engaged steering committee with C-level support and buy-in in your organization. Again, these are the team members that are going to support the strategic initiatives. So if there's an issue with strategy, if there is an issue with execution, et cetera, escalations, they will be where the buck stops. And having an engaged steering committee is going to be a very powerful tool and a hallmark of a successful program, right? Not that you can't have a successful program without a steering committee, but that's going to increase your chances of success having an engaged steering committee. Next one is a no-brainer, right? Ensuring that data contracts, agreements, everyone has access to, right? So this is more of the discipline. If you're thinking in the IA, ITAM key process area setup, this is more the discipline of documentation management, right? Ensuring that the right people have access to the right data at the right time. So that's a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how much of a siloed nature and reticence to share some of this information exists, especially due to legacy setups, mergers, acquisitions, et cetera, in organizations. If you can get this to a good degree where everyone has the ability to affect change based on correct and complete data, that's going to be very powerful. And again, kind of a feature we've seen of successful programs. Documenting a complete and correct risk register and communicating that regularly to the business, right? Ideally, this relates back to that first bullet. If the software asset management or indeed the application portfolio management capability is going to uncover either an optimization opportunity or a risk, that has to be owned and communicated and followed up to be effective. Otherwise, if you're saying, look, there's a potential risk with this publisher, and no one's doing anything, and it's not an effective governance, well, that's kind of a waste of time in SAM and in APM. So the documentation of these topics, carrying of this business intelligence of there's an opportunity or there's a risk, that is critically important. So again, we've seen successful programs are ones that treat that communication very effectively and leverage the business intelligence to get that back to areas of the business that need to take the requisite action. Creation of an adherence to an audit response framework. So this is very much more in the focus of software asset management. I'll spend a little time here. We would recommend a standard set of processes and procedures, inclusive of a standard set of roles and personnel, potentially, that would respond to potential challenges of compliance or audits in a structured and repeatable way. So, similar to the fact that you're building up a capability and you want things to be consistent and sustainable, this is no different in the area of specific risk mitigation around audits. You do not want to be reactive, running around like a chicken with your head cut off, finding out, where this data is incomplete. We need to get a report out. I don't know who to talk to. That is not where you want to be. You want to take this proactive and sustainable approach that, okay, we've received a notification from a publisher, and then that would trigger that response framework, right? So creating and adhering to that via policy is very important. And again, I'll throw it back to the first bullet with this as well. If that framework was not adhered to and there was an increase in potential risk, well, that would be a topic for the C-level or steering committee, as it were, to manage, right? So creation and adhering to that response framework to mitigate risk in the organization is something that we found to be a hallmark of successful SAM programs as well. This one, again, is more of a no-brainer, right? So long-term plan and budget, short-term phases that will support and establish the program and plan identification of risk areas, establishment of processes and controls to then execute and eliminate the risk areas, right? So that's a little bit, but obviously you have a programmatic approach. You want to both budget and allow your long-term plan to align with company strategy, but then in the short term, look for those opportunities, potential low-hanging fruit and risk areas, and make those priorities areas where you have a potential deficiency in your business via processes and controls. And that will help eliminate those risk areas, as well as identify those opportunities where you potentially can leverage some cost savings. So just that structured approach as well is what we've seen a lot of successful software asset management programs focus on, both looking at the long-term plan to make sure that there is a programmatic and rationalized structured approach, but also to identify the quick wins, and that will increase support in the short and medium term. Education, training, and resources. So, obviously, if you're a staffed, organized capability with budget resources, this speaks to continuous improvement, right? You want to make sure that the staff and involved roles in your organization are going to take advantage of industry leading knowledge and certifications as necessary, right? In order to have the capability to internally execute any of the project work that's required. And that last one, it looks like it's a little cut off, but it looks like it says process to support a single source of truth in terms of tooling, right? So you definitely want to have a view to what you own and a view to where you have a potential area of risk, right? So we always like to talk about that known unknown and the unknown unknown. And that's a wholly and fundamentally different concept, right? If you have an unknown unknown, your thumb is squarely in the air saying, I don't really know what's out there in the environment, and could be anything. Yeah, there's some kind of risk. I can't really quantify that. That is fundamentally different to saying, okay, I know that I have an unknown area and it is approximately 10% of my estate. And here are the hallmarks of that. And it is in, let's say, some Linux servers that I have an issue with discovery, and I can isolate which data centers they live in, right? So again, that's a completely different position to saying, yeah, there's some unknown stuff out there. I don't really know where it is. So when you have the known unknowns, that allows you to focus in and look at those deficiencies. And then, from a couple bullet points up, think about where you have those deficiencies and prioritize those processes and controls to help you eliminate the areas of potential risk. Okay, Dave, so you can go to the next one, please. And I think this one is back to Len to talk more about some of the foundations of APM and SAM and the potential synergies.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, we can view this as a model for structuring and scoping a project, but also to define those synergies and how these two initiatives are so complementary together. And really, it starts with data and technology. Once we get into the next slide, which is our project on a page slide, we'll really see how important the data is to enabling this whole program. But this is solving those things that we talked about at the beginning when it came to multiple sources of truth for application data, really reconciling your financial data and your spend profile to your CMDB, identifying those new records that IT was unaware of previously, or that were business paid and the CIO didn't know about in the past, really cleaning up your data. And then when it comes to the technology side of the house, how clean is the CMDB? Can we refresh that data set for your application CIs? Beneva is a ServiceNow elite partner, so we really love that whole platform for enabling this comprehensive view from your data, your CMDB, following the common services data model, CSDM, building your processes on top of that, and then leveraging APM and SAM Pro to sit on top of your CMDB and drive your savings. So oftentimes in the technology space, that CMDB cleanup or alignment to CSDM so that it enables those modules is also a key factor. There's more than that though too. It's talking about things like integrating your SCCM data, making sure your consumption information is all available and clean, as an example, again, to enable the on-top practices. So really, it's a great starting point is doing that technology review, doing a data cleanup, and getting some foundational questions answered to the CIO on how many applications we actually have in our environment and what we're paying for them. We're averaging right now about a 9% spend identification that IT departments were previously unaware of when we support that data cleanup work. So at 9% in addition to the G&A budget associated with software maintenance on an annual basis, we find about 9% more software spend out there that the business was or that IT was unaware of. The processes too, we could spend a lot of time talking about this, and we don't have necessarily a lot of time, but I did want to highlight a few. We do have a combined, with Anglepoint and Beneva, combined process library for SAM and APM processes and how to integrate those together. And one of those processes, for example, is your new software renewal and renegotiation process. So how do we combine SAM and APM together with that? Well, for many organizations, the software renewal process can quickly devolve into a simple checkbox or rubber stamping process when that workflow item comes into their inbox and they approve that invoice to be paid for another year. But really, if we're running a great renewal calendar, 60, 90, 120 days in advance, and providing the tools and information for those approvers prior to that renewal happening, they can be discussing and bringing into a conversation for more strategic apps, the planning and architecture function, to understand the roadmap of that application, its time, Gartner life score, and also looking at software licensing information and looking at licensing posture and position and opportunities there. So really, that's one of the key process areas that we focus on, to integrate your planning and architecture function with the IT business management office, procurement, supply chain, and the operations teams for applications that hit a certain threshold, for example. But APM and SAM then also, share process work with new software acquisition, ongoing analysis and dashboarding, portfolio health, portfolio costing, trending over time. There's so many common processes that enable both APM and SAM that sit on the foundational data housed within your CMDB once it's reconciled and cleaned up really well. And really, these integrated processes to us enable groups that historically don't speak that much together within your company, the planning and architecture and operations and ITBM. It really integrates and coordinates their activities so that, as Chris so effectively stressed in the last slide, this is more of a sustaining practice. It's not a one-time thing that we can pat ourselves on the back at, where we save a bit of money and then 2 years later we've lost all those savings again. But rather this can be an ongoing practice within an organization that they focus on and continue to reap ongoing cost optimization benefits on into the future. So this is a bit of a conceptual model for how all of these pieces work together to enable savings from APM and SAM.
Yeah, I would completely agree, Len. Just to add on top of that, if you're kind of curious about the data quality or measure or completeness, this would equate to something like the Microsoft SAM optimization module rating of rationalized, right? So those kind of areas of process maturity, and potentially to the ISO 19770, the trustworthy data, right? So you're building the processes. And Len absolutely correctly stated, that making sure that your CMDB is very clean. You want to have that trusted data before approaching this. But then, to his point as well, if this is sustained, this is a shift in how you are potentially doing business in your organization, right? You are moving from a reactive renewal is my inbox and we're going to renew 15% more because that's just always what we do every year, add 15%, to a thorough view and negotiating position based on data, based on knowledge, based on capability. You're going to leverage the capability and value add of APM and SAM into these core processes, right? That's why they're sitting in the middle. And that's really where you're going to start getting that risk mitigation, that cost savings from both of these capabilities, building them out over these same processes with trustworthy data. So Dave, I think we can go to the next one. Thanks.
Great, yeah. And so what are some ways of kicking off this type of program or practice? Let's really make this real. There's a great Q&A comment in there too that I'll reference from Ryan here soon. But really that phase one, it might sound onerous to clean up all those data sources, to reconcile your inventory, to clean up your CMDB. But really, depending on your size of an organization, we've reconciled CMDBs and application inventories just around the 3,000 business applications mark, excluding all of the versions and small stuff in about 8 weeks. So typically, an organization is within the 4 to 8 week window to do the data cleanup, foundational work, and to understand our technical readiness. But that's really the first step, and we just can't stress that enough, how important it is to get our data clean and ready to go. Savings capture, to Ryan's point about SAM and APM, starting there with simpler publishers and demonstrating savings in phase 2. It doesn't take long for us to be able to move into a tangible cost optimization demonstration for decision makers within your organization. And if we start with simple publishers like Microsoft or Adobe, or frankly even Salesforce, all those SaaS based applications, it really allows us to demonstrate credibility, to earn additional sort of approval from the executive to move ahead to more complicated rounds and continue that savings journey. On the APM side, similarly, there's a bit more setup there to map all of the inventory to a business capability model that we can develop or enhance or leverage whatever is existing at an existing client. But we're comfortable with all of that, to map the software to it, to analyze it. But even then, it's about a 12-week from phase 1 to phase 2 journey for APM to understand comprehensively every single record within your application inventory, what the savings, potential, posture, recommendation, and difficulty rating is for that. And right after that, typical 10, 12, maybe 14 weeks for large enterprises, quick wins can start to be saved right out of the gate. And this was an answer I gave in the Q&A as well, about a very common challenge where there's no money available to run a project to go and save money. So we see that often, but the reality is if we demonstrate quick win savings on the SAM profile when it comes to those SaaS applications, and we start capturing quick win savings from a rationalization perspective, things that are within IT's control, things that have just proven to have no users and nobody really even knows what that application is doing. There's quick wins to be had. Even within that phase, these initiatives are often self-funding. So the savings that you generate are more than the consulting fees that it would have taken to get up to this point in time.
And just sorry to jump in there very quickly, Len. On that point, right? This is I would completely agree with this this post, right? That's all too common. And what I would suggest is start small, right? Look for those quick wins and then start building that credibility and case out from, okay, this was a very quick win, a cleanup of AD in an application no one used anymore, right? So those quick wins will demonstrate your capability and your ability to then further save money in a structured approach. So if the C-suite is saying, go save money, we're not going to give you any money to do it, fine, take on that challenge and say, okay, we're not going to have a full-blown SAM or APM capability as yet, but use those practical quick win steps that you can demonstrate maybe at first as a one-off and say, look, this capability, if we can do this again and again with a little resource and a little further budget, we can expand and then extrapolate, right? Think about this quick win. We'll think about if we could look at all of our applications. We'll think about if we could put more consistent capability in place. That will give you the foothold to start demonstrating that with a little bit more, I'll say it, with a little bit more trust from the organization, right, from that C-suite, they're going to see that return on invest. I just wanted to call that out.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, and it really is. I mean, if there was an appetite for a very laser-focused, let's prove this out on SAM Pro, that on ServiceNow, that we can do a couple of SaaS publishers, we really are measuring the time to savings identification in a matter of weeks. And so, of course, we are big supporters of the full program and how to make this an ongoing activity for an enterprise. But to build credibility, if we from start to finish, it's really we're doing a lot of POCs, a couple of weeks on SAM Pro to demonstrate Microsoft, Adobe, all the SaaS savings opportunities. So definitely scalable based on needs and requirements of clients. And then I wanted to build off of Chris's thought there. This is exactly why we put the lifecycle management processes in phase 3, because often coming out of phase 2, that's when there's been a ton of excitement and energy built within the organization, where maybe I think our averages when we go in for an APM project is clients have tried that 3 or 4 times before we arrive. So sometimes there's a history of maybe failed attempts at standing up an APM program. But coming out of this phase 2, there's often such good energy, and now it's been proven that to be successful, and hey, there's actually real dollars here in savings. Then the conversation is often primed and ready for the more executive decision makers to say, okay, now I believe this. I see the value that this can bring, and we'll be willing to invest more now in maybe some of the more complex publishers like Oracle or IBM, or yeah, we do really need these sustaining practices to keep these things alive, so that the savings that we've just realized don't start going out the door because of now immature processes that we're aware of. So that it's really a good cadence to tackle the data, to prove it with some savings, and then move into the whole life cycle management within your organization. That approach just builds a lot of credibility. Chris, did you have anything else to add to that slide?
No, thanks, Len. I think we can go on.
Sounds good. And just to highlight some of the savings opportunities with these SAM and APM programs as well. We're averaging 13% reduction in annual software maintenance spend from rationalizing duplication. As mentioned, we also tend to identify additional spend that organizations were not aware of, but both of those numbers tend to be quite welcome from organizations. And this is where we do say that these projects are self-funding, often in year, depending on when we would start, but certainly within 12 months. If not a lot of checks have gone out the door yet by the time we start, we can often get in front of that procurement process, do the analysis, make sure that we're not paying for things that we no longer need or want, and save money in year. But certainly over a 12-month window, that's when we're averaging a 13% reduction in a company's annual software maintenance spending. So to us, driving down technical debt, saving licensing, reducing rationalization, or reducing applications to rationalize them. And that to mention as well is just indirect cost savings. And so we know that, when you're pulling out duplicate applications, you're also reducing the complexity of your support environment, you're cleaning up infrastructure. There's a bunch of ancillary indirect savings that are not highlighted, but we try to keep our numbers very real and provable, because we can point to specific invoices and purchase order numbers and that directly tie back to a cost that has been saved. So 13% average direct savings for these programs. If it's an M&A client, just to add, obviously that number tends to get quite a bit bigger because the duplication is substantial. If a company has a history of M&A, that average tends to go up because of, again, just a lot of duplicate applications across the combined enterprise.
Great, thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Chris, for going over that. I think that brings us to the end of the slides. We got a couple more just real quick on who Beniva is and Anglepoint. A quick overview in case anyone is interested in following up with us. Leonard, do you want to go over Beniva?
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll talk quickly to us. So we're a 75-person organization that's headquartered in Austin, Texas, and Calgary, Alberta. As mentioned, we're really proud to be a ServiceNow elite partner, specializing in ITAM, ITOM, and CMDB. So this is really our area of focus. Done a lot of M&A work and tend to work within organizations anywhere from about 2,500 people up to 40,000. So a wide breadth of experience across North America for us.
Yeah, and for Anglepoint, we are focused on IT asset management. So we help customers do cost optimization, mitigate risk. We provide operational excellence. We were founded in 2009. Our president and chairman, Ron Brill, was pioneering the SAM industry back then, and he's still leading it today. So Ron chairs the International Organization for Standardization for ITAM today. He's also recognized as Professional of the Year by the ITAM Review. And I just highlight this because when you work with Anglepoint and Beneva, you're getting the preeminent leaders in the industry. This is what we do day in and day out. Anglepoint's operating in over 7 countries globally today. We have over 130 people. We have dedicated teams to each of the publishers, of course, to the top core publishers, Microsoft, SAP, IBM, and Oracle. But we cover over 60 publishers altogether. And we offer a wide range of services in ITAM, from point-in-time assessments, taking a look at current environments, future environments. I would say the majority of the business that we do is around managed services, though. So a hybrid approach to helping customers manage their software estates. And then, as Chris is highlighting, we do SAM program design, SAM tool implementation, and a number of other things. So if anyone's interested, please reach out. I'll highlight also that for the first time in 2020, Gartner released a Magic Quadrant around managed services, and only 11 firms made the cut. And Anglepoint's really proud to be very favorably placed in that leaders quadrant on the top right. And the firms were based on 2 variables: ability to execute and completeness of vision. And we are excelling in both areas. And this is also highly driven by customers, right? So customers providing data to Gartner and references about the work that we're doing. So with that, we'll jump into some Q&A. And Braden, or I don't know if we have any in the chat, or start kind of taking these. Or Leonard, is there any common questions after these presentations around APM, or Chris specific around SAM, maybe that we haven't addressed already?
Yeah, I see a chat just came in too about the biggest challenge of rationalizing software portfolios. And so I think probably the biggest challenge is, or I would say maybe not the biggest challenge, but the biggest perceived challenge and fear is often the business engagement that is needed to enable some rationalization decisions. And so, that's often a roadblock that IT departments will put in front of themselves, just being a little fearful to go and engage on often what need to be the business decision. But what we found is, depending on how that's structured and framed, we obviously have our toolkit for enabling those conversations and how to make it a collaborative and a discussion that doesn't cause too many fires, frankly, is our experience has taught us that if they're engaged in the right way, we come to them with the rationalization ideas, the road mapping ideas. Oftentimes the business will say to us, you got this one wrong, this isn't right, yeah, this one looks good. Nope, we can't do that one, it's way too difficult. But actually, I think you guys missed these 2 other opportunities. And so they oftentimes also identify additional savings. So it's just an engagement approach and how you're enabling those conversations that can, frankly, we've never run into business issues or caused fires having that conversation. And then the second thing is there's so many savings often to be had just within IT's own rationalization sphere. When we map the costs to the capability models, the costs associated with IT, where IT can make their own decisions, are also pretty robust. And so that's a common concern, but one that we work around pretty well. Hopefully that answers the question on rationalizing software.
Yeah, and I would echo what Len said, right? That's a very good way of kind of expanding the sphere of influence, but also, quote unquote, starting in your own backyard, right? Looking at the sphere of influence of IT, demonstrating that savings capability, that'll give you a lot more traction to expand that capability within the business.
Mm-hmm. Chris, do you want to answer Charles's question on federal government?
Yeah, so we do have some clients where we have security clearance. We've worked with a few Department of Defense clients. If you want to send an email, Braden, if you can put our Anglepoint email in the chat, please. You can ask some further or specific questions. You feel free to reach out to any one of us as well, Charles. But we do service government clients as well.
Just advance the slide too. We have our email addresses down at the bottom here, but definitely continue Q&A.
The start small strategy, Jonathan, is harder to do with APM. SAM Pro, if you already have that, we can get SaaS connectors going pretty quickly to demonstrate savings. APM typically is about a 12-week exercise to get to that savings number. So there typically has to be a budget more associated with that, and a story told, frankly, to build approval for getting that funding. But as I put in the answer to the one question, 8 out of 10 of the clients that we begin speaking with don't have typically an APM budget approved for the year, but the CIO or the director or whoever can have the financial approval will hear the story, will call up some references, and have confidence that there will actually be a very real return on investment for the spending. So unfortunately, it's not quite as easy on the APM side to get engaged sometimes. But still the story is quite strong. I love Anne's question here. How do you enter an organization to do your magic, but then how would you describe organizations when you leave? And it's true that some companies hire us to do the one-time cost rationalization. There's a huge pressure on, or there's an M&A, they want that hit. And then, so, okay, great, we go in and save 13%. It has happened that if organizations don't express interest or engage us on the renewal or the sustaining practice side, standing up processes and the framework to keep this thing alive. I mean, we have been asked back 4 years later to go and do it again because they're treating it as that one-time project versus standing up that sustaining practice. Because we leave, we save the money over the next 3 or 4 years. Their portfolio spending kind of gets out of control again, and they realize, oh boy, we need those Beneva guys back and Anglepoint back. So we we like it when we can help out a client in any way. We really prefer it when we can help with sustaining practice and process.
I would only echo that. Right, we're big proponents in a hybridized approach typically, but also that kind of imparts a knowledge transfer and so-called teaching how to fish. Right, we don't want to say, look, you one-off exercise, chuck it over the fence and we're gone. It is very much building of that capability. I think that's kind of the key takeaway here is this needs to be an ongoing discipline to continually save money, mitigate risk, et cetera. Otherwise, you do risk, exactly like Len said, kind of slipping back into some of those old moduses of application sprawl and technical debt, et cetera, that you're trying to avoid.
On the inverse of that, it's actually interesting. We're working for a very large tech company in California right now where they've asked us to start with the processes and practice. And so, I'm not sure if I'm answering your next question, Anne, around what the biggest change is, but certainly, if an organization wants to start on the process and tooling side, so we're implementing ServiceNow APM and SAM, and we're putting in all the sustaining practices around it. They actually aren't starting with the cost optimization side. So that is a big change for an organization because you're obtaining buy-in, you're getting people into slightly new roles and responsibilities. You're adjusting what they have to do during that software renewal process. So it's a bit of a role shift for people, for the IT application owners, for people in procurement, for the architecture team. So the process side can be a bit of a change depending on existing roles and responsibilities, but you just have to manage OCM and tell the story as to why very effectively, and then you get the buy-in that you need to implement these programs. Chris, would you like to answer the SAM resource?
Sure. So an effective software asset management resource should have a kind of minimum viable technical background, right? Be familiar with technical profiles and kind of industry happenings, right? Be nominally familiar with architecture and the setup of your specific business, ideally. But beyond that, we really like to say that the ideal SAM candidate is a jack of all trades, right? Because in any given day, you'll be attacking process issues or communicating with operational folks all the way up to C-suites, to doing hardcore data analysis, to managing vendors or publishers, to interfacing with legal, et cetera, right? So I would say a kind of minimum technical competency complemented with a willingness to take on challenges and learn would be my ideal kind of profile for a software asset management resource. And I'll throw the APM profile to Len.
Yeah, it's interesting. We often find the APM practice housed within the architecture team, enterprise architecture team. That can be a blessing and a curse depending on the pragmatism of the architecture group in question. But we've also seen very successfully like folks from the PMO who are process oriented, good at orchestrating multiple stakeholders and different groups, stand up as sort of a standalone APM function or putting that under ITBM. Really what it comes down to is someone who has that enterprise best interest perspective in mind and can work well to coordinate the various teams, IT application owners, procurement, finance, architecture group, operations groups to decommission, for example. Really a strong people person who understands process, who again really has the best interest of the organization at heart, because they have to sort of broker decisions and conflict sometimes about should we choose app A or app B. So that kind of individual brings a very great and reasonable perspective to those kind of conversations. And they should be working together just across these common processes. The SAM and APM professionals, they should be working together. Their goal is the same. It's efficient use of company dollars and optimizing spend. And so, working together on common dashboards and outcomes should be definitely part of their mandate.
And I'll add there and avail that with the fact that Len and I don't often cross paths, but in prepping for this, it really is okay. We're speaking the same language, right? We're leveraging the same data on the same processes. So myself being more of a software asset management wonk, and Len being a very seasoned expert in the APM area, there's that overlap. And absolutely, like you said, working closely together to deliver that value for the organization is kind of second nature when we work together.
We only got about 1 minute left. Are there any other questions that we wanted to address? Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to follow up with any one of us. We would be happy to hear from you. And just want to thank everyone for joining today. We really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day to participate in this. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you all.